Hello everyone and welcome back to another album review. In this video I'm going to review This World Is Going to Ruin You by Vane.fm. This is the second full-length album by the metalcore outfit Vane.fm and their first album with a rebranding of the band since in their debut album Error Zone they were simply known as Vane. The band started really strong in 2018, creating a debut album that came out of nowhere and attracted a lot of people, gained a lot of support, and it is an album that even I managed to enjoy a lot. I was really pleasantly surprised with the results out of this album, considering that I don't invest and I'm not that much into metalcore. I ended up enjoying this album a lot and finding many great aspects about it. I rarely get impressed by metalcore and mathcore stuff, and for me Error Zone was one of the greatest examples of a more recent album going into this type of sound. I think that for its genre this album was really powerful, and so I was obviously looking forward to this second album over here, which is really nice to say that the very first one was not a fluke. This is another album that goes strong, and in my opinion it even improves from some of the elements out of the very first album. It feels like a more cohesive and more fleshed out album. The production is really solid on this one, it sounds amazing, and I would say that it has a bit of a more professional side to it. It might lack the absurd intensity and the wacky moments that you might find in Error Zone, and it doesn't really contain that much those electronic portions that were out there, and in my opinion would simply add up to the experience even more, and it's a more toned down album at times, having a few parts that might be a bit more melodic and catchy, not as chaotic or technical, and be a bit more subtle with its sound. That is not meant to downplay though how powerful and intense this brand new album is, because once again we're talking about a kick-ass record. Like, this album kicks ass. This is another powerful and intense metalcore project with really nice production, some really solid technical elements, some great breakdowns, and overall just one of the best albums I've heard in a genre once again in quite a long time. I mean, I don't really invest that much in the genre, but I'm really surprised once again with the results. And for me, the album just kicks off things really strong with the very first track, Welcome Home. Absolutely intense, immediately throwing you into the spot. This album doesn't play around. It starts instantly with a really powerful introduction and a track that, as it progresses towards the end, it gets more noisy and more intense, only to just suddenly, immediately transition into the Killing Womb, one of the teaser tracks and possibly my favorite teaser track. I really like how badass this track sounds. Once again, some really cool performances over here, nice technical elements, and just a really good sounding and well structured track, which then leads to actually one of the better moments over here with the track Versus Wyoming. It might only be 55 seconds, but there's just so much going on in just 55 seconds that makes this track really intriguing to me. This is actually one of the most chaotic and one of the most technical moments in the entire album, and it sounds awesome. It's just really nice to see how many things are packed up in such a short track. This for me makes it a really intriguing moment in the album. This has another progressively noisy transition that leads to Fear in Non-Fiction. It is the most melodic moment so far in the album. It is not like it doesn't have its moments, but the clean vocals halfway towards the song were slightly off-putting for me. I think it would be one thing if they were introduced into the song much earlier, as it doesn't really feel that structurally it makes that much of a sense, but still, with that being said, it's not that I don't like the song. I think that it's an enjoyable song, but I ended up enjoying more the more aggressive, technical and chaotic side of the album. But then as it goes on, it ends up providing a few different elements, as it could be a bit more dark and more atmospheric. This part of the album introduces itself with the track Whenever You Are, which ends up being one of the most unique moments in the album, and I really ended up liking the direction that it was going for. Then the album ends up using some of its more melodic aspects to its favor, creating some really catchy and memorable parts, which is why for me the tracks Magazine Beats and Inside Design end up being the two best moments in the album. I like how straightforward they are, and having those moments that would end up feeling so memorable and easy to digest. I think that it actually provides some really cool elements in those two particular tracks. Then we get a few lengthier and more fleshed out tracks, but but not necessarily tracks that I feel that structurally have that much of a lot going on to them or managing to be all that memorable. The main example for me would end up being the track Wavery, which is another one of those more melodic and subtle moments, which once again it has its moments, but I wouldn't say it's one of the strongest tracks on the album. And we get a pretty intriguing final track that goes for 7 minutes long, and it keeps on with this more dark and atmospheric tone, which after the introduction of the first half, which in my opinion actually kinda dragged it a bit longer than what I want to, it was kinda slow paced, but then after this point we get the second half, which actually ends up offering some of the greatest melodic moments in this album. I think that the second half of Funeral Sound is one of the most intriguing and one of the best moments out of the whole project. I don't think that as a whole it is one of the most well constructed songs, but I still feel that it's a pretty interesting and refreshing way to end the album. So yeah, for me, many elements that are enjoyable about this album. I like the production, I like the performances. I think for the most part it's a pretty consistent record that has a lot to offer. Now obviously if you're not into metalcore or mathcore, this album in no way is gonna change your mind. There is nothing really groundbreaking about this album. Vent.fm just happen to be really good at what they do. Just with their second album they've already established a really solid catalog so far. And I'm obviously looking forward to more, and I hope they keep this streak with solid releases in the future. I'm gonna give this word that's going to ruin you a 7+ out of 10. What's your opinion on this album? Like it, dislike it, why, and what do you want to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.